A millionaire CEO forced into a 7-day marriage contract. Until the one woman he chose rewrote his fate. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. Rain hammered against the glass walls of the Hale Industries rooftop lounge, turning the entire city into a blur of silver streaks and broken reflections. Adrian Hale stood with his back to the storm, his tailored charcoal suit absorbing the dim gold glow of the sconces. At 34, he was the kind of man people described as untouchable, the youngest CEO in the company's history, brilliant, calculated, sculpted by grief and pressure into someone who preferred contracts over connections. And tonight, he was trapped. His board had given him an ultimatum: produce a wife before the annual succession vote in 7 days, or watch his cousin Victoria take his seat as chairman. He needed a spouse on paper, someone harmless, someone temporary, someone with no ties to his world. The elevator chimed. The door slid open, and Maya Collins stepped into the room like a misplaced brushstroke in a painting that had taken itself far too seriously. 25, struggling barista by morning, exhausted art student by night. She wore a thrift shop coat still damp from the storm, curls sticking to her cheeks, eyes wide like she'd been dropped into the wrong universe. She had only come because a temp agency promised a simple delivery job with decent pay. She didn't expect a billionaire CEO waiting with a manila folder, or the way his intense blue eyes locked on her like he'd just solved a problem by accident. "You're Maya Collins," he said, voice steady, emotionless. She swallowed, clutching the strap of her soaked canvas bag. "Yes. The agency told me you needed a signature." Adrian slid the folder toward her. She caught a glimpse of bold letters across the top. Marriage agreement. She laughed softly, assuming it had to be some rich guy joke. "I think you gave me the wrong." "No," Adrian interrupted. "It's the right one." Her smile faltered. "Wait, what?" Adrian had no time for subtlety and even less for emotions. "I need a wife. For 7 days. A legal spouse in name only. No intimacy. No expectations. In exchange, I'll pay off your mother's medical debt and cover your housing for a year." Her breath caught. "How do you know about my mom?" "I vet everyone who walks into my building." "That's creepy," she whispered. "Efficient," he corrected. She stared at him like the room had tilted. Outside, thunder rumbled across the skyline. Inside, the air tightened. "Mr. Hale," she tried to laugh again, but it cracked at the edges. "You don't even know me." "That's the point," he said. "You have nothing to gain from pretending. You're honest, unconnected, invisible to the board. Exactly what I need." Her cheeks flushed, not from flattery, but from the sting of being called invisible. "Wow, romantic." "It's not romance," Adrian replied. "It's strategy." She should have walked out. She should have told him he was insane. She should have said she wasn't desperate enough for something this humiliating. But when he slid a second sheet toward her, her mother's medical bill printed in brutal black and white, her heartbeat stumbled. The hospital had warned her they couldn't hold the account much longer. Her mom needed another round of treatment. Insurance wouldn't cover it. Maya felt the storm inside her growing louder than the one outside. She lifted her chin, forcing herself not to look scared. 7 days? That's all. 7, he confirmed. "We sign tonight." His gaze didn't waver. It didn't soften. It didn't promise anything except cold, sharp certainty. "So, Maya Collins," Adrian said quietly, "do we have a deal?" Lightning flashed behind him, outlining his silhouette in a stark white halo. For one impossible moment, she wondered if she'd just stepped into the kind of story you only see in movies, the kind where choices echo, and fates change, and one signature can turn a stranger into something more. She reached for the pen, her hand trembling just once before she steadied it. And that is where everything began. The pen hovered over the contract, the storm still rattling the glass behind Adrian as if the entire city was holding its breath with her. Maya Collins finally signed her name, the ink trembling only once before she steadied her hand. Adrian watched, unreadable, as if he were sealing a business merger rather than tying himself to a stranger for 7 days. When she slid the folder back across the table, her voice barely rose above the hum of the rain. So what happens now? Adrian closed the folder with a quiet finality. Now, he said, your life changes. He checked his watch, already moving toward the elevator. You will need to come with me. We have fittings tonight. The first event is in 2 days. You need to look the part. She blinked. Tonight? I still have a shift at the cafe. Adrian did not slow. Not anymore. You work for me now. That is not how jobs work, she muttered. But the elevator doors were already sliding open, and something about the momentum of this night forced her feet to follow. When she stepped inside the chrome elevator, she saw her own reflection in the mirrored wall, storm-wrecked curls, thrift store coat, wide eyes full of fear and stubbornness. She looked nothing like a woman who should stand next to a millionaire CEO. Adrian stood beside her, tall, composed, untouched by the chaos around him. Why me? She asked quietly, because the silence was suffocating. Why not someone from your circle? His jaw flexed. Women in my circle come with agendas. You do not. That is rude, she said, but he did not flinch. Accurate, he replied. When the elevator reached the private garage beneath the tower, she froze at the sight of the sleek black sedan waiting with its engine already purring. The driver stepped out and bowed his head. Mr. Hale, Maya whispered under her breath. This is insane. Adrian opened the door for her. It is temporary. Insanity is acceptable when it expires in 7 days. His logic was sharp enough to sting. She slid into the back seat, feeling the leather swallow her small frame. Adrian joined her on the other side. The city lights streaked past the windows as they drove, each passing lamp stretching her reflection into something unrecognizable. There are things you need to know, Adrian said, pulling a second document from the folder. These are the rules of the contract. We will review them now. She groaned softly. Of course there are rules. 5 of them. Rule 1. We do not share a room. She nodded quickly. Perfect. Easy. Rule 2. You will attend every event with me and follow the schedule set by my staff. Okay, less perfect, but fine. Rule 3. You will not speak to the media unless instructed. I barely speak to customers at the cafe, so that is not a problem. Adrian's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but the closest thing she had seen. Rule 4. No emotional involvement. She raised an eyebrow. Trust me, Mr. Hale, that will not be a problem. He looked away as if the words bothered him more than they should have. And Rule 5, he said quietly. You leave without complications on the 7th day? No strings. No expectations. Listening to him list the rules like he was reading from a corporate handbook made something twist in her chest. It was not sadness. It was something else. Something like wondering why a man with everything needed so many walls to stay upright. The car pulled up to an exclusive boutique glowing with soft golden light. Assistants rushed out the moment they arrived. Adrian stepped out first, then turned back to her. From this moment on, he said, you are Maya Hale. Act the part. She swallowed hard and placed her hand in his, letting him help her out of the car. Cameras flashed somewhere in the distance, the first stirrings of curiosity as news traveled fast in this city. Maya stood beside Adrian, her fingers still wrapped in his. For someone who had built a life on being invisible, the sudden weight of 100 unseen eyes made her heart pound. 7 days, she whispered to herself. I can survive 7 days. But when she looked up at Adrian Hale, illuminated by the boutique lights like a man carved out of glass and thunder, she felt something she could not name. A warning, a beginning, or both. Ian, the boutique manager dressed in a sharp navy vest, greeted them with a smile that balanced respect and curiosity. Mr. Hale, everything is prepared, he said before turning his eyes toward Maya with an assessing softness. And this must be your wife. Maya nearly choked, and Adrian cut in with a calm, authoritative tone. We are keeping the details private. Proceed. Ian nodded and guided them inside the boutique, where warm golden lights bathed the room in a soft glow that contrasted sharply with the storm outside. Racks of gowns arranged by color lined the walls like curated art pieces, each dress shimmering under the light. Maya froze at the sight. I cannot wear any of these, she whispered, overwhelmed. They probably cost more than my monthly rent. They do, Adrian replied without irony. Which is why you are not paying for them. She shot him a look, but Ian interrupted gently. Miss Hale, we will find the perfect look for you. Tonight we do fittings for all 5 events. Maya blinked. 5. Adrian stepped closer, his voice slipping back into business mode. The first is a charity dinner, then the board reception, then the Hale family brunch, then the media gala, then the chairman's vote. You must look convincing at each one. Her stomach twisted. That is a lot of pretending to be someone I am not. Adrian met her eyes evenly. For 7 days, you are Maya Hale. If you act convincingly, everything ends cleanly. She inhaled sharply and let the truth settle. This was temporary. A performance. A trade. Still, the weight of the name felt heavier than she expected. Ian clapped his hands lightly. All right, Miss Hale, let us start. Within seconds, 3 assistants surrounded her, ushering her toward a fitting room. Mirrors wrapped around the space, reflecting every angle of her uncertainty. Dresses were draped over her arms, jewels presented on velvet trays, shoes placed at her feet. Adrian waited outside, checking emails, his expression carved from stone. But every now and then, he glanced toward the fitting room curtain, his jaw tightening, as if he was not used to being unsure about anything. When Maya stepped out in the first gown, a deep emerald silk that hugged her waist and spilled like water to the floor, the assistants gasped. Ian touched his chest dramatically. She is luminous. Maya tugged nervously at the neckline. I look like I borrowed someone else's life. Adrian looked up. For the first time, his posture faltered. The phone lowered from his hand. His breath caught, not dramatically, but noticeably. It works, he said quietly. His voice had lost its sharpness. Maya turned away from his gaze, heat brushing her cheeks. The second gown was silver with delicate beadwork that caught the light like falling snow. The third was black velvet with an open back that made her feel exposed and powerful at once. With each change, Ian narrated the vision. For the charity dinner, elegance. For the board reception, authority. For the family brunch, softness. For the media gala, brilliance. For the final vote, triumph. Triumph. Maya echoed. It is symbolic, Ian explained. You must look like a woman who stands beside a leader. Maya swallowed. But I am not that woman. Adrian stepped closer, his voice low. For the next 7 days, you are. The way he said it, firm, absolute, sent a ripple through her. She glanced at herself in the mirror, realizing she no longer recognized the woman staring back. After hours of fittings, accessories, and adjustments, Ian finally declared, we have everything. She will leave the city breathless. Adrian nodded once. Good. Send the final selections to my estate. Maya's eyes widened. Your estate? I thought I was staying in a hotel or something. Adrian looked at her as if the idea was absurd. My estate is the safest place for you. You will move in tonight. Her breath hitched. Tonight. You signed the contract, Mrs. Hale. The name hit her like a spark. Not painful. Not pleasant. Just real. Too real. As they stepped back into the cool night air, the storm had faded into a gentle drizzle, the city glistening like it had been freshly polished. Adrian opened the car door for her again, his movements controlled, disciplined. But when she hesitated before getting inside, he paused. You are trembling, he said simply. It is a lot to take in. She expelled a shaky breath. A little. 7 days, he reminded her, as if it was a reassurance. But somehow, it felt less like a countdown and more like a fuse being lit. As the car door closed behind her and the city lights blurred once more, Maya felt the shift, subtle, quiet, but unmistakable. The performance had already begun, and so had something else. The drive to Adrian's estate stretched across the outskirts of the city, where the noise faded into a quiet hum and the skyline dissolved into rolling hills. Maya pressed her forehead lightly against the window, watching the headlights slide across the wet pavement. She had never been this far from downtown, never seen neighborhoods where every driveway was longer than the street she used to live on. When the gates came into view, towering iron framed by stone pillars engraved with the Hale crest, Maya's breath caught. The gates opened automatically as sensors recognized Adrian's car. This is where you live, she whispered, unable to hide the disbelief. It is efficient, Adrian said, as if the sprawling mansion ahead was nothing more than a practical choice. The estate looked like something carved out of an old photograph. Wide steps led to double doors taller than anything she had ever seen, and warm lights glowed from within the massive windows. When the car stopped, The front doors opened and staff lined up quietly to greet them. Maya's fingers gripped her canvas bag like a shield. "You never said there would be staff," she murmured. "They maintain the property," Adrian replied. "They stay out of personal matters." She forced a tight nod, but everything about this place was overwhelming. As they entered the mansion, the marble floors reflected the soft chandelier light, and a sweeping staircase curved upward with quiet elegance. Maya tried to make herself smaller, acutely aware of every echo of her footsteps. Adrian glanced at her and slowed his pace, as if he could feel the weight pressing on her shoulders. "There is a room prepared for you," he said, guiding her toward a hallway to the right. "This one is closest to mine. For convenience." She stopped walking. Convenience for what? His eyes flickered, unreadable. "We will be appearing as a married couple. People will expect proximity." She swallowed hard, following him down the corridor. The room he opened was larger than her entire apartment. A king-sized bed framed by velvet pillows, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the dark garden, and a vanity stocked with high-end products she did not even recognize. "This is temporary," she reminded herself under her breath. 7 days. Adrian stood at the doorway, hands in his pockets. "If you need anything, press the call button on the nightstand." "I will not be pressing it," she said quickly. His brow lifted. "Why not?" "Because I do not need someone waiting on me. I do not belong here." He studied her for a moment, the sharpness in his expression softening at the edges. "Belonging is irrelevant. You are here because we have an agreement." "That is not comforting," she muttered, and he almost smiled. "Almost." "Get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow morning, we begin training for the charity dinner. You will need posture work, etiquette, and speech coaching." Her eyes widened. "Speech coaching? I thought I just needed to stand there and look married. People talk at these events." He replied, "You must be prepared, especially with my cousin watching." "Victoria?" she asked, remembering the name from earlier. His jaw tightened. "She will be the first to question our marriage. You cannot give her any reason to doubt." Maya's stomach twisted again. The pressure felt suffocating, like invisible hands pushing down on her chest. When Adrian stepped out, closing the door gently behind him, she let out the breath she had been holding since they arrived. She set her canvas bag on the bed and stared at her reflection in the window. A girl who made coffee for a living. A girl who lived paycheck to paycheck. A girl now living under the same roof as a man who could buy entire city blocks without blinking. She whispered to herself, "I can do this." But even as she said it, doubt curled around the edges of her mind. Hours later, as the mansion settled into nighttime stillness, Maya wandered toward the garden balcony outside her room. The air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and wet stone. She rested her hands on the railing and let her thoughts drift. That was when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, startled, as Adrian stepped into the moonlight. He had shed the suit jacket, sleeves rolled up, the white dress shirt making him look less like a CEO and more like a man caught between worlds. "Could not sleep?" he asked. "Too much happened today," she admitted. "It feels like I am playing a role I do not know the lines for." Adrian's gaze drifted toward the dark garden. "You will learn." "That sounds like a command," she said softly. He hesitated, the silence stretching between them. "It is not meant to be." Something about the way he said it, quiet, almost vulnerable, made her breath slow. For a moment, the world felt suspended. Two people who did not belong together, sharing the same moonlit air. Then Adrian straightened, the walls sliding back into place. "Get some rest, Maya. Tomorrow is a long day." He left as silently as he appeared, and Maya stood alone on the balcony, hand pressed to her chest, wondering why the night suddenly felt charged with something she could not name. 7 days, she reminded herself again. 7 days to pretend. But tonight, under the soft glow of the moon, it felt like the pretending had already begun to blur. Morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains of Maya's room, warming her face before she was fully awake. For a brief moment, she forgot where she was, expecting the cramped ceiling of her old apartment or the distant hum of the cafe's early morning machines. But then her eyes opened to the sight of the grand balcony, the velvet chair by the window, and the immaculate room that smelled faintly of lavender and polished wood. Reality rushed back in. She was in Adrian Hale's estate. She was his wife on paper. And today, the real training began. A knock sounded at the door, crisp and polite. Maya scrambled to her feet. "Come in." she called, smoothing down her hair. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 40s, elegant in a black suit and pearls. "Good morning, Mrs. Hale," she said with a warm but professional smile. "I am Caroline. Mr. Hale assigned me to assist you with today's preparation." Maya blinked. Preparation for what? Caroline clasped her hands. "Your etiquette training, posture coaching, and behavioral alignment for tonight's charity dinner." The list hit Maya like a whirlwind. Behavioral alignment? Am I being programmed? Caroline chuckled. "Think of it as polishing. Please follow me." They walked through the mansion's halls until they reached a bright sunroom overlooking the garden. Two other staff members waited with notebooks, a tea set, and a camera on a tripod. Maya hesitated. "Why is there a camera?" "So you can observe your posture," Caroline said gently. "Do not worry. You will improve quickly." What followed could only be described as the most intense crash course of her life. She learned how to sit with poise, how to walk without rushing, how to hold a champagne glass, how to smile without looking nervous, how to introduce herself, how to make eye contact that said confidence instead of fear. Every misstep was met with patient corrections. Every improvement earned a soft nod. Hours passed, and fatigue crept into her muscles. Caroline poured her tea and offered a reassuring smile. "You are doing very well, Mrs. Hale." Maya let out a tired laugh. "I feel like a wild animal being taught table manners." "Not at all," Caroline replied. "You have a natural grace. It simply needs structure." Before Maya could respond, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Adrian appeared in the doorway, crisp in a tailored suit, every button in place, every line sharp. His eyes scanned the room and then landed on her. Something in his expression shifted, so subtle she almost missed it. "How is she doing?" he asked. Caroline smiled. "Remarkably well. She learns quickly." Adrian walked closer, his gaze lingering on the way Maya held her cup, the angle of her shoulders, the calm in her posture. "Good," he said, but his voice sounded softer than his usual measured tone. "We have one more training session before tonight," Caroline added. "Couple dynamics." Maya nearly choked on her tea. "Couple dynamics? You must look like a believable married pair," Caroline reasoned. "People notice small details, especially around Mr. Hale." Adrian remained still, but his eyes flickered, just for a moment. Caroline continued. "You will practice entering a room together, matching stride, subtle gestures of familiarity, and coordinated responses." Maya's heart climbed into her throat. Subtle gestures of familiarity? Such as guiding her with a hand on the back, sharing a private glance, leaning in when speaking, Caroline explained. "Nothing dramatic. Just enough to imply real affection." Maya dared a look at Adrian, expecting discomfort, but instead his expression held something she could not decipher. Determination? Hesitation? Both? "Very well," he said. "Let us begin." Caroline instructed them to stand side by side. Maya tried not to stiffen when Adrian's hand hovered near the small of her back, not touching yet, but close enough to send a spark through her spine. "Relax," Caroline said gently. "You two are a unit." Adrian stepped closer, his presence steady and controlled. When Caroline told him to guide her forward, his hand finally rested lightly against her back. Maya's breath caught, but she moved with him, their bodies aligning in a rhythm she did not expect to feel so natural. "Good," Caroline approved. Now a shared glance. Adrian turned his head. His eyes met hers. For a heartbeat, the world fell silent. It felt too real, too close, too much. Maya broke the gaze first, clearing her throat. "So this is what pretending feels like." Adrian lowered his hand slowly. "Pretending," he echoed. But something in his tone did not sound convinced. As the session ended, Caroline dismissed them to prepare for the evening. Maya stepped into the hallway, her pulse still unsteady. Adrian paused beside her. "You did well," he said. "Tonight will require more, but you can handle it." She exhaled. "I hope so." He studied her for a moment longer than necessary. "You will." As they walked toward their separate rooms, the air between them carried a new tension, soft, quiet, but unmistakably alive. If this was just the beginning, she wondered how she would survive 7 days pretending to be the wife of a man who made her heart race without even trying. Evenings settled over the estate like a velvet curtain as the sun dipped behind the hills, leaving behind streaks of gold that shimmered across the long windows. Maya stood before the mirror in her room. Her emerald gown fitted perfectly to her frame, the fabric sweeping around her like moving water. Her hair had been styled into soft waves, her makeup subtle but luminous, making her look polished in a way that both impressed and intimidated her. She hardly recognized the woman staring back. Caroline fastened the final clasp of a delicate bracelet around Maya's wrist. "You are ready," she said warmly. Maya swallowed. "I do not feel ready." "That is normal," Caroline replied. "Just remember your training. And remember that Mr. Hale will be beside you." That thought did not calm her. If anything, it made her heart race even faster. Caroline opened the door, and Maya stepped into the hallway where Adrian was waiting at the far end. He stood in a black tuxedo, the lines sharp, the fit flawless, and for a moment Maya forgot to breathe. Adrian Hale was already striking in every setting, but tonight he looked like the kind of man who could silence a room without speaking a word. When he saw her approaching, his expression shifted almost imperceptibly. His eyes widened, the slightest softening at the edges, a breath catching in his chest, as if something unexpected had struck him. He recovered quickly, but not quickly enough to hide the moment. "You look," he paused, clearly choosing his words with unusual care. "Appropriate for the evening." She rolled her eyes. "That is the coldest compliment in the universe." A corner of his mouth lifted. "You look beautiful, Maya." Heat rose to her cheeks. "Thank you." Caroline's voice broke the charged silence. "Remember your couple dynamics. Stand close. Move as one. Let Mr. Hale guide you." Adrian offered his arm. Maya hesitated for half a second before placing her hand lightly on his sleeve. The warmth of him seeped through the fabric, grounding her and unsettling her all at once. They walked toward the grand staircase, their steps synchronized like they had practiced, though now it felt different. More real, more dangerous. A chauffeur waited outside, and soon they were seated in the back of the sleek sedan heading toward the charity venue. The city lights reflected off the windows as tall buildings rose around them. Maya tried to steady her breathing. "What exactly happens at this event?" "We donate. We mingle. We maintain appearances," Adrian replied. "Most importantly, people will be evaluating you." "Evaluating me for what?" "For whether you belong at my side." The bluntness stung, but she appreciated the honesty. Maya looked out the window. "And if they think I do not belong? Then we make them believe otherwise." His certainty was a strange comfort. When they arrived at the venue, a long red carpet stretched toward glittering glass doors. Photographers lined the walkway, flashes already sparking like distant lightning. Maya froze. "You did not tell me about the photographers." "It is standard," Adrian said. "Stay close. Follow my lead." The car door opened, and noise poured in. Camera shutters clicking, reporters calling names, guests greeting one another. Adrian stepped out first. Then he extended his hand to her. She took it. His fingers closed around hers, steady and warm, pulling her into the bright chaos. As soon as her feet touched the carpet, the flashing intensified. "Mr. Hale, over here. Is this your wife? When did you get married?" "Mrs. Hale, look this way." The sound was overwhelming. Maya's pulse skyrocketed. She felt her smile falter, nerves tightening her posture. Without looking at her, Adrian leaned slightly toward her, keeping his voice low and calm. "You are doing fine. Just breathe." She exhaled slowly. Adrian placed a hand at the small of her back, guiding her forward. It was just like training, but the touch meant something different now. Comfort. Presence. Claim. They reached the entrance where guests turned to greet them. Adrian introduced her with that composed confidence only a born leader possessed. "This is my wife, Maya." Wife. The word hit her with surprising force. Some guests looked impressed. Others looked skeptical. And then there was one voice that sliced through the crowd. "How fascinating." Maya turned to see a tall woman with dark red lipstick and a diamond necklace that glittered like frost. Victoria Hale, Adrian's cousin, the one who wanted his seat. She smiled without warmth. "So this is the woman you married." Maya opened her mouth to respond, but Victoria leaned in slightly. "Let us see if she can keep up." And just like that, Maya knew the real test had begun. The charity ballroom shimmered with cascading chandeliers, their golden lights spilling across polished marble floors and glittering gowns. Soft music drifted through the air, punctuated by polite laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses. But beneath all that elegance was a current of scrutiny that pressed against Maya from every direction. Guests eyed her with a blend of curiosity, judgment, and thinly veiled skepticism. Victoria's smile hardened as she drew closer, her gaze sweeping over Maya like a scanner searching for flaws. "Welcome to the inner circle," Victoria said, her voice smooth but sharp enough to cut. "It takes a special kind of woman to handle this world." Maya forced a polite smile. "I will do my best." "Oh, I am sure you will try," Victoria replied, lifting her champagne glass. "But trying and belonging are not the same thing." Adrian stepped slightly forward, shielding Maya with the subtle position of his body. "Victoria, enough," he said calmly. "We are here to support the charity, not engage in whatever this is." Victoria gave him an innocent look. "I am simply making conversation." But when she turned back to Maya, the sweetness dissolved. "Come, let us see how well you can manage the room." Before Maya could speak, Victoria looped her arm through hers and guided her toward a cluster of elegantly dressed donors. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he allowed it, knowing pulling Maya away too soon would look suspicious. The donors smiled, polite but assessing. "So you are Adrian's wife," one woman said, her tone cool. "How did you two meet?" The question hit Maya like a sudden jolt. They had rehearsed this. She straightened her posture just like Caroline taught her. "We met by chance," Maya said, keeping her voice steady. "It was unexpected, but sometimes the best things in life are." Another donor adjusted his glasses. "And what do you do, Mrs. Hale?" Maya took a breath. "I am an artist." Victoria arched an eyebrow. "A barista artist," she corrected lightly, loud enough for everyone to hear. Maya's stomach dropped, but she kept her expression neutral. "I work at a cafe, and I paint in my free time," she said calmly. "Art does not always fit into a perfect category." The donors murmured politely. One woman even smiled, impressed by the honest answer. But Victoria's eyes narrowed. She was not satisfied. "My cousin has extremely high standards," Victoria added lightly. "Some of us never imagined he would marry so quickly." Maya nodded. "Neither did I." There was a subtle strength in her tone that surprised even herself. The donors exchanged glances. Some amused, some curious, but undeniably intrigued. Adrian approached then, placing his hand at the small of her back with an ease that looked startlingly natural. "Everything all right?" he asked. Maya nodded. "Perfectly." Victoria's lips pursed. She saw that Maya had not cracked. Not yet. But she was not done. Later in the evening, when the charity auction began, the crowd moved toward the grand stage. Victoria seized the moment, leaning close enough for only Maya to hear. "You are doing better than I expected," she whispered. "But let us see how you perform under pressure." Before Maya could ask what she meant, Victoria stepped forward and announced loudly, "Maya, dear, why do you not present the next auction item on behalf of the Hale family?" Heads turned. The lights shifted toward Maya. Adrian stiffened. "Victoria," he warned, but the crowd was already clapping, expecting Maya to step forward. Maya's pulse thundered in her ears. She had not trained for public speaking. She barely had time to breathe. But backing out would make her look incompetent. It would make Adrian look like he married someone weak. She inhaled deeply and walked onto the stage. Adrian stood just behind her, close enough that she could feel his presence like a steady anchor. The spotlight hit her eyes, bright and blinding, but she forced herself to smile. "Good evening," she began, her voice soft but clear. "Tonight we are presenting a piece that represents hope and renewal. It is a sculpture donated to support families rebuilding their lives after hardship." She paused and scanned the audience. Their faces reflected interest, not judgment. Encouraged, she continued, "Every dollar tonight helps someone find their strength again. And I know personally that strength often grows in the moments we feel the most lost." The room fell silent, struck by the sincerity in her voice. Adrian stared at her, stunned by her poise. The bids began flowing, each one higher than the last. When the auction ended with record numbers, applause filled the room. Maya stepped off stage, heart pounding. Adrian met her halfway, his expression unreadable, but his eyes brighter than she had ever seen them. "You handled that beautifully," he said quietly. "You impressed them." Maya let out a shaky breath. "I impressed myself a little too." Victoria watched from across the ballroom, her smile tight, her eyes cold. She had thrown Maya into the fire. And somehow, Maya had walked out shining. For the first time, Victoria realized this fake marriage might be far more dangerous than she expected, not for the company, but for Adrian's guarded heart. The applause from the auction still echoed faintly in the ballroom as the evening flowed into its final hour, but Maya could feel a shift in the air. Something unspoken pulsed beneath the polite laughter and clinking glasses, something colder, sharper, directed squarely at her. Adrian escorted her through the room with practiced confidence, greeting donors, exchanging nods, appearing perfectly composed. But every few minutes, he glanced at her with a quiet look that felt like a question he did not yet know how to ask. When they reached a quieter corner near the tall windows, Maya finally exhaled. "I survived," she whispered, half in disbelief. Adrian's lips curved slightly. "You did more than survive. You exceeded every expectation." Her heart fluttered for reasons she did not dare name. But the moment did not last. A sudden ripple moved through the crowd, followed by hushed murmurs. Adrian stiffened. Maya frowned. "What is happening?" Before Adrian could answer, a screen flickered on near the stage where a slideshow of charity highlights had been playing moments earlier. But now it displayed something entirely different. A series of photos. Grainy. Zoomed in. Taken from afar. The first photo showed Maya stepping out of Adrian's car at the estate earlier that morning. The second showed her entering the boutique. The third showed her signing something at the boutique counter, taken from an angle that made the paper appear suspiciously like a document of importance. A fourth photo appeared. Adrian and Maya in the mansion hallway, his hand guiding her back during couple dynamics training. Harmless moments twisted into something else. Someone in the crowd gasped. A man whispered, "Is that a contract?" Another muttered, "Did he buy his wife?" Maya's blood turned cold. Adrian's jaw clenched with lethal tension. "Who did this?" she breathed. He already knew. Victoria appeared at the edge of the crowd, her smile gliding across her lips like a blade. "Oh dear," she said with false concern. "What an unfortunate misunderstanding." Reporters who had been invited for the charity coverage began lifting their cameras, sensing a story. "Mr. Hale," one called out, "is your marriage legitimate?" "Mrs. Hale, did he pay you to marry him? Is this an arrangement to secure his chairman's seat?" The questions came like arrows. Maya's pulse pounded against her ribs. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Adrian stepped forward, pulling her slightly behind him as he faced the crowd. "This is a violation of privacy," he said sharply. "My marriage is not up for debate." But his authority only fueled the frenzy. "Then prove it," a reporter challenged. "If the marriage is real, show us something real." Maya felt the room tilt. They wanted proof. Not words. Not explanations. Proof that she and Adrian were not bound by a contract. Her throat tightened. She was not prepared for this. She was not trained for this. Victoria folded her arms, voice dripping sugar. "Go on, cousin. Put the doubts to rest." Adrian looked at Maya, then really looked at her. His expression shifted, authority slipping into something rawer, more vulnerable, more conflicted. She had seen the mask. This was the man beneath it. "Maya," he said softly, as if checking if she was all right. Cameras flashed. Guests waited. Victoria watched like a predator savoring the moment. And then, without warning, Adrian reached for Maya's hand. His touch was steady, warm, grounding. He drew her closer, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "I will not let them humiliate you," he murmured. "But I need to know if you are comfortable with what comes next." Her breath trembled. "What comes next?" His eyes held hers with a question she had not been expecting. "Let me kiss you," he said quietly. Her heart lunged into her throat. Not a rehearsed gesture. Not a staged pose. A kiss. For the world to see. For the lie to look like the truth. But something in Adrian's voice, it did not sound like a lie at all. She nodded once, barely a breath. Adrian cupped her cheek, gently, almost reverently, as if asking for permission again with the touch alone. Then he leaned in. His lips met hers in a kiss that was soft at first, then deeper, full of unspoken emotion neither of them had prepared for. The room fell silent. Camera flashes burst like fireworks. It felt nothing like pretend. When he finally pulled back, his forehead brushed hers, his breath uneven. Maya stared up at him, shaken to her core. "Adrian," she whispered. But before either of them could speak again, Victoria's voice cut through the hush. "A kiss does not erase a contract," she said coldly. "And I will prove it." With a flick of her wrist, She signaled someone at the back of the room. A man stepped forward, holding something in his hand. It was a photograph, a close-up shot, of the marriage contract. Signed. Maya felt her world crack open. The night that had started with triumph was now spiraling into a storm, and there was no telling who would survive the fallout. For a moment the world collapsed into a blur of camera flashes, shocked gasps, and the sickening crack of betrayal that echoed inside Maya's chest. The photograph of the contract, held high in the man's hand, gleamed under the chandelier lights like a weapon designed precisely to shatter her. Guests murmured in waves. It is real. He did pay her. What a scandal. Maya felt her breath break. Adrian stepped in front of her, as if shielding her from arrows. Enough, he said, his voice sharp as steel. This ends now. Victoria crossed her arms, her smile smug and poisonous. It ends when the truth is acknowledged. You married her to keep your chairman's seat, and everyone deserves to know. You want my seat so badly that you are willing to destroy a charity event to get it. Adrian countered. That tells the board everything they need to know about you. But Victoria only lifted her chin. The board will demand the truth, and lies cannot protect you. Maya felt the room tilt, her chest tightening with humiliation. She whispered, Adrian, this was a mistake. The pain in her voice cracked something inside him. Maya, do not say that. She stepped back, shaking. You said no one would get hurt. You said this would stay private. Her voice trembled. You lied. I never meant for any of this to touch you, he said, his voice softer, pained. I will fix it. But Maya could barely hear him over the storm inside her. Cameras continued flashing, hungry for her fear. She had to get away. She turned and walked out of the ballroom, her heels clicking against marble, a sound too thin to support the weight of her breaking heart. Adrian immediately followed. Maya, wait. She kept walking. Do not follow me. But he still did, his footsteps fast behind her. When they emerged into a quiet corridor, she finally spun around. This is not a marriage, she said, her voice cracking. This is a transaction, and transactions end. Adrian reached for her hands, but she pulled away. Do not, she whispered. Not when I do not know what is real. The contract is real, he admitted. But everything after that, everything with you, that became real in ways I never expected. She shook her head, tears threatening to fall. You cannot say that. Not here. Not tonight. He took a breath, the kind that sounded like it hurt him. Then tell me what to do. Tell me what you need. Maya swallowed, her voice steady despite the tremor. I need the truth. And I need space. He froze. She stepped back. I am going home. Home, he repeated. To your apartment? To whatever is left of my life that does not involve secrets or cameras. The car ride back was silent. Adrian insisted on taking her himself, but neither spoke. When they reached her old building, she opened the door without looking at him. Maya, he said, voice raw. I never wanted to lose you. She stepped out. You never had me, Adrian. Not really. The door shut, soft but final. Days passed. The world dissected the scandal, but Maya avoided every headline. She returned to her cafe job, blending back into the quiet corners of normal life, telling herself it was safer this way. Meanwhile, Adrian faced a war inside the board. Victoria attacked relentlessly, waving the contract like a victory flag. But Adrian did not defend himself. Instead, he said one thing to the board. The contract existed. I am not proud of it. But Maya Collins did nothing wrong. She showed integrity in every moment she stood beside me. If this costs me the seat, so be it. I would rather lose a title than see her name dragged through lies. The board fell silent, and one by one, members shifted, not toward Victoria, but toward Adrian. He kept his seat, and Victoria was stripped of decision-making power for unethical conduct. But Adrian did not celebrate. Instead, he showed up at Maya's cafe 3 days later, holding something she never expected. A canvas. Her canvas. The one she kept hidden under her bed, a painting she never showed anyone. She stepped outside, stunned. How did you get that? I found it when you left the estate, he said gently. I had no right to keep it, but it reminded me of everything you were trying to build. He took a breath. And I want to help you build it. If you let me. She stared at him, unsure. Why, Adrian? His voice was quiet and honest. Because somewhere between pretending to love you and trying not to feel anything, I failed, and I do not want to pretend anymore. He handed her a small folded paper. She opened it. The contract, torn cleanly down the center. It ended the moment you walked away, he said. Now I am here asking for something real. Her heart trembled. For the first time, she saw him not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, but as a man standing in the cold, waiting for her to decide his fate. And what if I say no? She whispered. Then I will still support your art, your dreams, your mother's care, he said. Because loving you does not depend on what you give back. Tears gathered in her eyes. He stepped closer, carefully, respectfully. Maya, may I start over? Not as your employer, not as your contract partner, but as someone who wants a life with you. She searched his face, seeing sincerity in every line. Then she exhaled softly. Yes, she whispered. You may start over. Relief washed through him, pulling a real smile from his usually guarded expression. And when he pulled her gently into his arms, she let herself hold him back. No pretending, no contracts, just truth. Months later, Maya's first art exhibition opened downtown, funded quietly but proudly by Adrian. At the center of the gallery stood her favorite piece, a painting of two hands reaching for each other in the rain. Beneath it, a simple plaque read, 7 days, one forever. And beside her, Adrian laced his fingers with hers. No cameras, no contracts, just two hearts choosing each other freely. And this time, the world was not watching. Only they were.